atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen.
Coming at you from City, BC and stay away, Florida, this is Left of the Valley 2.0. My name is Kevin, and I tell you that if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you toss him into a pool full of piranhas, you never have to worry about him again. Jody, as usual, is the team.
That's how they got rid of Joey the Snitch.
That's what much of fish.
As usual, is the team that did a performance on puns. It was a play on words. Guys, welcome back.
That's good.
And this show was brought to you by our patrons. You too can become a patron. Go to patreon.com/LETV, and you can help Troy finally escape from the ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese. Guys, the second half of the show, we'll be talking to Andrew Pledger in the second half of the show. But first, let's do our usual chit-chat. All right. And tell me this isn't Tennessee news. Last March, a law was signed that was supposed to in the supposedly real state of Tennessee, which I found out last week. I didn't know it was actually real. Governor Bill Lee,
fake news.
Governor Bill Lee,
Governor
Bill Lee signed a bill designed to restrict drag performances, putting the state at the forefront of a Republican-led effort to limit drag shows in at least 15 states in the recent months. Now, a U.S. District Judge, Thomas Parker, which is actually an appointee of former Republican Donald Trump, it's a Trump judge, ruled late on Friday that the new law was, quote, both unconstitutionally vague and substantially overbroad and encouraged discriminatory enforcement.
Wow.
Well, there we go. A Trump judge essentially came down and said, no, you can't do this.
Damn. I mean, and that's what they love. They love the broad. You know, they love the broad and having to being able to interpret it just about anyway, because there, you know, you could use that law to like shut church stuff down. You know, you could say that Jesus, like doing a Jesus production in some place, you could say, oh, that's a dress. He's wearing a dress, and that's drag, boom, because it doesn't say drag. It's like some kind of dance thing or something. I can't remember what the word was that they used. But
you know, to play devil's advocate for half a second, when you write a new law, you kind of have to write it broadly to begin with, and with time you kind of amend it and specify it. But you're absolutely right, Bradley. They love to write it super, super broad, and I think they're also counting on the fact that the left, for most of the time, won't bother actually going to say, well, we're going to use your law to put your own words back in your mouth there and make you eat crow. Which, and unfortunately, I think we need to do more of that. A bit like what the Satanists are doing with their when they fight back. So,
well, another story that speaks to this, and I'm pretty sure it also comes out of Tennessee, is the laws that they had on book bans in schools. Mm-hmm. One group of parent activists actually used that law to get the Bible banned. So I think the final verdict was the Bible could be in high schools, but elementary schools it was just too graphic, violent, and sexual. And it's and that's a perfect example of what happens when a law is like too broad. Mm-hmm. It can quickly become a double-edged sword. So it's like
absolutely.
So like I don't know if the judge realizes that it's like this is just going to blow up in our face. So let's come back with more details, or if it's a case where he actually. Where he actually is like more liberal, but
well, under that new law that he wrote, that the judge basically kind of started to call unconstitutional, offenders actually risk being charged with a misdemeanor or a felony for repeat offense and prison sentence up to 6 years for a drag show.
Oh my goodness!
For a drag show, dude.
Yeah,
I thought this was America. Like what?
And
no, it's freedom for me, not for thee, Brentley. Get that correct in your head.
Exactly. Right?
And if you're exposed to a drag queen, I don't know, you're gonna want to dress up and lip sync to Cher. I guess that's what's going to happen.
That's it.
Hey, Cher's amazing. And of course, ahead of the 2024 elections, Republican lawmakers across the country have introduced more than 500 bills this year regulating the conduct of gay and transgender people, ranging from what they can be taught in school to bathroom use and medical care. So there's a little bit of hope there, at least, that even a Trump-appointed judge can actually see the light. Although I kind of wonder, is he actually doing this because it's the right thing to do, or is Brentley correct by saying, yeah, this is going to come and bite us in the ass if we don't write it back down?
Yeah, I'm siding with Brent.
I actually don't. I mean, I think that I think he thinks it's unconstitutional because, like, if they start writing bills like that and putting them through, he knows that that they can push. Democrats can push through bills that do basically similar types of stuff, but against them. And then it's just going to be like nothing's ever getting done. All the bills are just like going through just to hurt one another. Yeah. And, it's just going to become a fucking nightmare,
Are we
already there, kind of.
We're already there. Are you just describing the current system we live in?
Although, from an international observer, when I look at current Democrats, they're not likely to actually do that, but if you were to put like some progressives in power, they would actually do that. It was like, yeah, fuck you. You're doing this, then we'll do this back to you. Democrats have a tendency to just roll over. The moderate Democrats have a tendency to just roll over and take it.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like the mainstream Democrats in the States, I do not see them as very liberal. They're more liberal than conservatives. But like compared to like Canadian liberals, they're right out there in conservatism. Like Nancy Pelosi just got a reward from a whole bunch of hospital lobbies for all the bills and progress that she kept from being put forward to better enhance American health care. Now that's something you would think a Republican would do, but at the same time, it's like the Democrats they seem to push through like Republican style policies while claiming that they're progressive and left, and it's and anybody in the party that actually is progressive, they seem like AOC. It just seems like they get vilified.
Both sides hate her. It really seems like they're paid to go down in the fourth. You know what I'm saying? Like they got to pretend like they're fighting, but they go down in the fourth. You know what I mean? Like,
it's kind of funny because you have the tendency to think that if a normal Canadian conservative voter was to move to the U.S., he would be a Democrat. He would be called a Democrat. He wouldn't be called a Republican because it's that far. Anyway,
that's weird.
Well, we got our far right guys up here too.
Oh yeah, we do. Don't get me wrong. We have our far right. And watch your Oath news. Nick Fury wannabe lookalike Oath Keeper founder Stuart Rose has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for his role in January 6th Capitol attack. 18 years.
But there was no insurrection. If there was an insurrection, you would have people charged with treason. Didn't we hear this for the last year and a half?
Oh no, it was Antifa. It was Antifa that did the insurrection.
Antifa tricked him. And he went along.
They were just, they were just people that said Trump, sent them there, and and had the Trump flags and the Proud Boys
Trump, and then decided to take his advice and go there.
And don't forget about the FBI instigators. So
of course, can't forget.
Well, they're lizard aliens, so
the lizard people were like they were manipulating MAGA also to make them look bad. So
in the longest penalty yet for any crime committed in the attempted insurrection, the judge said Rhodes poses an ongoing threat to American democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
About time.
Here's the culture difference. After J6, I think it took the Canadian government like maybe a month or two to label Proud Boys as a terrorist organization. Meanwhile, how many years has it been for you guys to finally start accepting hey, these are actually bad people?
There's good people on both sides. It's both sides. You don't know. There's good people on both sides. That's been the official American answer.
On both sides. It's just because someone's next to you at the grocery store doesn't mean that they're not a freaking bigot, behind the scenes. Let's make that clear.
True. So is this by far, like I said, the longest sentence of any of the 1,000 plus people charged in connection with the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack by supporters of then President Donald Trump and Mango Mussolini? In addition to seditious conspiracy, a felony charge involving attempting to overthrow or put down or destroy by force the government of the United States, Rhodes was convicted of obstructing an official proceeding and tampering with documents, and he was also acquitted of 2 other charges. Rhodes gave a defiant speech before sentencing, likening himself to Soviet dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn, or whatever, according to a report. The sentencing Thursday comes just weeks after Proud Boy National Chairman Enrique Tarrio was convicted of seditious conspiracy alongside other leaders of the far-right group for what prosecutors said was a separate plot to block the transfer of presidential power. The Proud Boys are scheduled to be sentenced in August and September.
Oh, I love it.
This is good news as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm doing cartwheels in my brain.
Right? And there's 2 votes that Trump won't get for the next election.
We've been saying this on this show for a long time. I mean, if you look at the numbers, and the numbers don't lie, right? 3/4, okay, 70. It's called, I believe it's 75% of all domestic or all terrorist attack in the U.S. involve far right. 3/4. Wow. And if you're thinking, because if you think of terrorists in a lot of Americans' mind, the first thing they think of Muslim jihadists. That's like not even 20%, I believe, the real number. And then I think there's like a 5% in there that's like left, but 75% right wing. I mean,
it makes perfect sense. They're obsessed with hating everybody and guns.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So yeah, I've got it's just.
They all think they're patriots. They all think they're George Washington. They all think they're going to be, we don't like us, we're going to shoot you and start a revolution.
And they all want to talk to your manager.
They're playing army boy. That's it's like they. Some of them are former military and somewhere along the pipeline got radicalized, but most of them have never been in combat. They've never done anything that I would consider like that would require bravery, basically. And now they have all these perceived threats in their brains, and then they get mad, and then they're like, well, I need to prove my manhood because I have a small dick, and if I have a small dick, the only way I can prove my manhood is to go out and spread hatred, and I need someone to tell me what to do because I can't think for myself, but I think for myself. Mm-hmm. And it's just that radicalization that keeps happening. And I'm not saying like small dick physically. I'm saying like small dick energy. Like you.
Well, you know what,
so
Helen, I think
you're insecure. Yeah,
perfect timing. Helen, it's perfect timing. You talk about small dick because if you too have a small dick, you can go to our new sponsor, AdamandEve.com. Why don't you tell them what happens if they go to AdamandEve.com?
They have fleshlights just for you.
That's right.
They're a little bit smaller, but they work just as well. So put an LATV in the code at the end to get 50% off your order of any one item. Any one item on the order. Sorry.
And you get free gifts.
And free gifts. Yeah, you get like 6 free DVDs and 3 free gifts. One for him, one for her, and one for both of you. And free shipping. So, yeah.
Well, if you too have a small dick energy friend out there, reach out. Go to AdamandEve.com/LETV and you can get 50% off.
So, out of curiosity, are the small fleshlights are they LED with the smaller bulbs or
Oh, now I want that in my life. A light up fleshlights, like with LED lights, and hit my man and be like, "Hey, Merry Christmas! Have fun masturbating," and then like it's a light show.
Oh yeah, do you have a strobe light in there?
Because you want people to draw attention to you. That's what you want, when you're doing that.
When you're masturbating,
yeah.
AdamandEve.com/LETV. Get 50% off. Excellent. One item. Perfect. Moving on. Helen, my dear, do you have a top 10 for us this week?
I do. So happy Pride Month, everybody. It's Pride Month. Happy Pride Month. So since I
top 10.
Okay, mofos, it's time to do some debunking. So for my top 10 this week, I decided to do top 10 gay myths.
Oh.
So we're going to do some debunking, mofos. Okay. So number 1, the myth of gay recruitment. So
right.
I'm sure, and this comes from the Memphis Flyer. And this is a conversation somebody had with a gay pastor, conservative pastor. So this is to kind of, show, like a Christian's perspective of the 10 gay myths. So this will be interesting. So, number one, the gay recruitment. I can find a spouse from the existing pool of gay people the creator created. So, the creator made the gay people. So, you know,
Good.
God is gay. God is gay. So,
Well, I think it's funny as how
so
old this myth is.
this gay person was like, I am not out to convert you or your kids. Don't want to. Don't need to. God gave me plenty of people to choose from, and I chose one already. So, just make sure, that.
How do you go about that? Come on, just
This
give it a
myth has
try.
been around for such a long time. Like I like watching old PSA movies from the 50s and 60s just for culture references. And yeah, it's like right there taught in schools that gays groom young men. And it's and there was one PSA where the gay man actually killed the child after grooming him to become gay. So it's like it's like this myth has been in the public ether for like several generations.
But I mean, how do you groom somebody to be gay? It's like, come on.
Listen,
you're attracted to it. Just you like it though.
Listen, Kevin, the reason why I'm queer is that in the 90s, all the gays started coming out and wanting rights. And they just infected me. That's what happened.
Yeah. You inadvertently shook hands with the gay person, and you didn't wash afterwards. And this
is the problem, right? They're putting gays in movies today, and think of all these gay kids that had to watch heterosexual kids movies when they were young, and they turn not gay.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? It spreads.
Because maybe that's not how that works.
That's right. That's not how it works.
I don't know. Bugs Bunny looked pretty sexy dressed up as a woman all those times. Just ask Garth from
Bugs Bunny was our introduction to drag, and
it needs to be banned.
And gender bending and seducing someone with a stutter.
Absolutely.
Yep.
2, being gay is more than sex. So obviously this person said my gayness is based in love, not sex. I have an emotional, intimate connection with my spouse. Sure, we have sex, but it does not define us as a couple or as people. And this is that was one I had to like deconstruct when I was a teenager, and my little bi self was like, well, I gotta, do I have to have sex all the time? And then as I kind of because I was still trying to get the religious messaging out of my brain, and you, as someone that is queer, and you question that, you realize that your sexuality and your sexual practice is just part of being a person. Yeah. So and I think that, and that myth is still out there because they see pride parades and people and like gay men in like short shorts and shaking their butts, and they lose their shit.
Meanwhile, go back to the 50s and the straight men were short shorts. So it's
like right. Yeah, it's not. I mean, while it is also about sexual freedom, to be able to be like sexual or whatever, because they've been shamed so much about that, but it's also just that's not the only, because a lot of times people are like, oh, it's just all about this. It's like, no, man, it's not about that, like 100%. Like that's just a very small part of it.
So the next one, which is one that it keeps coming up over and over again, that the reason why there's pedophiles because there's gay people.
Oh God.
And it just because as a person, pedophiles come in all forms. There are bad gay people, just as there are bad straight people. We've got pedophiles among our group. So do you. You actually have more because there's more of you. So maybe we should focus on fighting pedophilia, and because it's bad for everybody, no matter what group you're in. Mm-hmm. Let's not hurt kids. Let's just not do that.
No. Just consensual sex all around. How about that? Can we just
consensual sex?
100%.
If you're an adult and you can consent, if you are of sexual age and you can consent, then but children can't consent. And you're gross, like you're terrible.
That's it,
and I think but it's still the same rhetoric. They're using words like grooming And that's why we have trans kids now, and people are freaking out over clothes at Target because, there's kids out there that don't want to conform anymore. And,
who also does grooming?
And it has to be the pedophiles grooming,
Well, who also does grooming, right? If you see chimpanzees that just do, they all kind of pick fleas and ticks off each other. That's called grooming too. So
Right.
something about that, It's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's annoying.
So also keep in mind that the gay community is diverse. This is number 4. We are not all men in leather thongs with feather bows dancing on top of gay pride parade floats. Oh, I was right.
Yeah. You know what? When I was Christian, that really surprised me. When I started actually meeting real gay people, and they were nothing like what to what I was told. Like the first gay guy I met, he was like wearing a suit, and I was like, "What? I thought you were supposed to be dressed like a flamingo dancer or something."
Yeah, exactly, right.
Wait, it wasn't a bathing suit?
No, suit
Okay,
tie. If I remember, the guy was in advertising.
Like this was something that I kind of had to learn too when I started going to like gay bars and stuff like that and be amongst my peoples. It's just a bar. Like there's a little bit more dance music and and there's gay men and gay women and queer. It's a queer extravaganza. Like, and everybody's just comfortable being themselves. And I'm just like, I don't know what, but I know they think that everybody's fucking each other at a gay bar, and that's not what happens. I'm sorry.
The alcohol is pink for some reason. It's weird, man.
Yeah, it's just hanging out in a judge-free zone. That's what it's been every time I go.
It's drinks and dancing and queerness. That's all it is.
When I was growing up, I was fairly popular with the other sex. And a lot of the girls would want me to go with them to a gay bar. Mm-hmm. And I asked one of the girls, "Why are we going to a gay bar?" And she said, "Because it's the one place we can be there without being hit on all fucking evening by a bunch of drunk guys." And I said, "Okay, I get it." They felt safer.
Right.
Oh no, you're good. Go ahead.
Because like me and my gay husband, we go to gay bars together and we dance and we have a good time. I mean, not so much anymore because we're getting old, but we used to do it all the time. And my husband was perfectly happy. Like, go be queer, go be amongst your people, go dance with your gay husband. It'll be great, because it is one place because if I go into a bar, I get hit on by men. And I will tell them that I am married. And I've had men that say to me, "Happily?" And I'm like, I just said, I'm letting you know I am not available.
Yeah.
So, and that's the type of shit you deal with. But, what are you going to do?
Right.
So, just so you know that some gay people believe in God.
Whoa.
Oh, I know. So, the first thing I hope to hear God say, if you go to heaven, yes, Jennifer, you have a reservation, but I'm afraid I don't see Pat Robertson or Jerry Falwell on your list. So that's what I hope God says to me.
Exactly. Right.
So, the God I believe in is loving and liberatory. Okay, I know wishing hell on anyone is exactly a demonstration of loving. And so forgive me, Father, for I have sinned.
It would take way too long to explain it, but there are biblical arguments that defend homosexuality, and the ones that are against homosexuality, a lot of the time they've been taken out of context or retranslated in a way to make homosexuality seem wrong. A famous one is like a lot of people will point to Paul, but Paul wasn't talking about gay men; he was talking about temple prostitutes. But they just changed the translations around to suit the popular culture. So, but there's no reason why a gay person can't be gay. I mean, can't be religious. Except for God's not real. But
it's like a woman voting Republican. That kind of goes against your self-interest.
Yeah, and that's there's churches around that are like, I'm not far from this, and this leads into number 6, that like, you know, if you are gay, you can get married in a church. You know, there are churches out there that are very progressive. They're okay with trans people. They're okay with gay people. You know, no matter where you are on the spectrum, they don't care. You know, and I think that's great for people that are religious and still in the queer community, and still have those beliefs. And I don't want to poo-poo on that, because I want more of that, because religion isn't going away. And I'd rather have progressive churches that don't shun people versus what I see in like these conservative Christian denominations where you know, they say like being gay is bad, being trans is bad, you know, whatever bad messaging they get, and there's something wrong with you. And then we get like gay conversion therapy, and I'm using my quotes here, therapy that hurts a lot of people. So, you know, even as an atheist, I can kind of be like, well, I'd rather have this than hatred and trauma to people.
Yeah, and it's like you'll hear me like rant about religion quite a bit, but you know, there's lots of progressive churches out there that you know, their faith is focused inwardly and not outwardly, and it's usually the inward focus Christians that are more accepting of the gay community, because they realize that it's more about each person's personal journey for their religion than trying to get everybody else to be like what they think the world is supposed to be like. Mm-hmm. And it's, but either way, moving on.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. We got to move on here.
So I'm going to do the next few real fast. So slurs go both ways. So, you know, maybe we shouldn't like call each other names. Like, I don't want to say to, you know, the straight people that you're all a bunch of fucking breeders. And so, you know, don't say that. I won't say that to you, and just don't call me gay slurs. Breeders. You know, queer breeders. Yeah, that's all your. You know, that's your job.
Because they breed.
Don't call us like so. Don't call queer people like sodomites or, you know, groomers or any of that stuff, because, you know, just let's not call each other names. Like, slurs aren't okay, but we have slurs. We'll use them if you let us. So, also too, like, listening to you straights. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now. We love all your advocacy. We want, you know, all that positive stuff, but don't put rainbow stickers on your cars or any of that stuff, because then we're going to think you are gay. And we don't have like this automatic gaydar in our brains. They're going, that person's gay. So, you know, I say like putting stickers that you're an ally is better.
Fair enough.
Otherwise, I'm just going to put you in with us. You know, I'm going to include you in the game, in the queerness. I'm going to do it. I will.
Right.
So, okay. Now, I remember this when in the 90s that like being queer TV, like Will and Grace and other TV shows, started getting absorbed by the straights. And now there's more, and now luckily there's more queer television at the time, in the times. But still, because straight people like to infiltrate a lot of things, they want to appropriate the queer stuff. Like, just let us have our things, please. just let us have it. It'd be really nice. You can enjoy it, but don't try to appropriate, like, you know, make it yours, because, you know, like we don't have much. You know, like, let us have our culture. That'd be great. And number 10, we notice your inconsistencies. So, if you really, really don't like gay people and think gay sex is disgusting, quit buying porn with women having sex with women. That's gay sex. And Americans spend $1 billion a year on porn. When was the last time you saw a straight porn film that didn't have two women going at it? If you quit buying this stuff, maybe the porn industry would fold. Something that I think might benefit women across all orientations. Go ahead, do it. Call me conservative.
See, I don't like being a hypocrite. That's why I only watch Japanese tentacle porn or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
it. Yeah, that's
Hentai?
equality.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on, but hey, it looks popular.
And I have an addendum on that last one. Like, if somebody wants to work in sex work, it's work. So I don't think, but I do think we have to get rid of the misogyny and that bullshit in the sex industry, you know. And I think, and that would lead to things being better. So that's it. That's my top 10 for the week.
That's for the...
Look, I debunk stuff. I'm a scientist.
Troy, how
Also,
long
here's
is your
science, bitches.
how long is your segment, buddy?
I'm hoping it's short. It's a
Every time he says that, it's half an hour.
not a whole hour.
Not a whole half hour.
So today's segment is the 7 sleepers. For anyone who thought they slept in too late, well, these guys slept in for 372 years.
Wow. It's not even sleeping around, it's just sleeping.
Yeah, they were asleep in a cave. Early to medieval Christians knew the story as the 7 sleepers of Ephesus, if I said that right. Today, there's like multiple variations of the story. The most popular is known by Muslims, who refer to Ashab al-Kaf, and I probably didn't said that right either. But it was very popular among Christians until the Reformation movement, when Christianity started focusing less on the saints.
So you've got a story about people sleeping?
Yes. It's
it's bad if those religions are boring as shit, but now we're actually going to listen to something about people sleeping?
Oh, yeah.
They have a whole book about dreams, man, just explaining their dream. Like, last one.
If listeners remember my segment that I did on the Syriac infancy gospel of Jesus, you'll remember me saying how Syriac Christians dominated Arab regions before and during early Islam, which had a significant influence on the Quran, as many of the Syriac myths can be found in Islamic mythology or folklore, or whatever you want to call it. The Quranic version is not very different. It follows the same narrative with a slightly different ending, and it leaves out a lot of details, like knowing how many sleepers there were, almost as if the story was passed on to Muhammad by word of mouth and not dictated by the angel Gabriel. Either way, there are many other variations of the story, but it first appeared in a Syriac text in the late 5th century, or about 240 years after the first story took I wrote that in wrong. But either way, regardless, the story was extremely popular. Variations of the story were found in 9 different ancient languages in over 200 manuscripts. As for how long they slept for and how many sleepers there were, this differs. Muslims claim about 300 years, and Allah kept the number of sleepers a secret. Other tellings are all over the place. A Jewish version has as few as 3 sleepers, with earliest versions having of the story being 5 or 8. But the one that I'm doing has 7. Or the most popular one is in Christian circles, whatever, from the Golden Legend, that has 7 sleepers. As for how long they slept, well, that's all over the place too, with the shortest time sleeping being about 195 years and the longest being 373 years. The version I'm using is from the Golden Legend, like I said, and that's the 372-year version. So let's start things off with the truth, myth, or boulderdash. Historians have concluded there really was a cave discovered in the 5th century and Christians found 7 sleepers inside of it.
Really? Okay, that's true myth or balderdash. I see, that's a myth.
Yeah, I'll go with myth.
That would be mine. Yeah,
it's actually true. They certainly didn't claim that the sleepers were alive, but they do agree that a cave was discovered and they found human remains inside.
Well, hold on. That's like saying you found a cave with 7 people dead, and you think you found the cave with the 7 sleepers. They're dead. I mean, it's a crime scene.
It's a totally created myth.
They're technically sleep. They're not awake.
Yeah, well, yeah, technically, they're saying
Fair,
very soundly.
fair, friendly, fair.
Yeah.
It's a technicality.
I couldn't find the deets on it, but there was mention of the myth being based on an older Greek myth. So it's possible they just found like a couple of people in the cave and it's like, oh, this must be that legend, and then they just started building on it from there. But either way, next up, multiple choice. Which of the following countries has the location where the which of the following countries has the location of where the 7 sleepers were located? A, Jordan, B, Turkey, C, Tanzania, D, Syria, or E, China?
Oh, God.
Oh, goodness.
Syria?
I'll say Jordan.
Jordan's a good guess.
All right. I'm going with B.
Yeah, it was a trick question. All of the above.
Oh. Okay.
Like I said, the legend really got around. So each country tailored their myth to their preferences, which often included making the myth local.
You know, now that you mentioned the 7 sleepers, I remember that. There was like Sleepy and Dopey and Doc. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, in the Muslim version, there's no Snow White, but there is a dog. So it's like, but either way, So there are 33 countries. Yeah, there are 33 countries who claim to have the original tomb. But the official tourist trap is where Kevin guessed Ammon, Jordan. In Jordan. Wow. Tongue don't fail me now. It's been a pilgrimage site and served as catacombs since around the same time the legend first began. Even though Turkey holds the record, claiming that they have 3 caves that are the original cave.
3?
3.
Caves are the original?
Yeah. 3 and 1. 3 for the price of 1.
I'm like, I'm
you
trying
don't
to make
just
it make
damn
sense.
win.
Stop, brain. Stop trying to make it make sense.
Just like Noah's Ark, there's like 20 of those too,
I think if I'm surmising correctly, I think what happened was people wanted to be buried in these places because they were holy and stuff. So to hope that some God juice rubs off on them.
Yeah,
so they probably created the myth saying that we got the local one or whatever, so that it's like they can sell catacomb space. I don't know.
Yeah,
but either way,
that's where the saying "sleep like the dead" came from.
Yeah. With Turkey, though, in Turkey's defense, though, the first story takes place in Ephesus, which was a port city in ancient Turkey. But either way, let's get started on the story. The first part of the story is often referred to as a passion. Now, if you think passion translates to Christian gore porn, ding, 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 you're 100% correct.
Woohoo!
That's exactly what I was thinking, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
In the movie.
If you want some Christian gore porn, go to adamandeve.com.
I know, I was going to say, get Adam and get 50% off one item. And you'll get free gifts. So go to adamandeve.com and use the code LATV. You can have passion without the Christian gore porn.
Speaking of gore porn.
That's 10 points for Ellen on that one.
Yeah. Either way, so they basically go into this a very horrific detail of how Christians were hunted down, ripped apart, hung on city walls, fed to wild beasts. And of course, they also go into how all the untrue Christians chickened out and submitted to doing a pagan sacrifice or just running away. But either way, next up, truth, myth, or balderdash. The edict that led to the slaughter was from Emperor Decius, who demanded a loyalty oath, which meant performing a sacrifice to the Roman gods. Those who refused were brutally killed, and this lasted for almost 100 years until Constantine adopted Christianity.
Yeah, that's bullshit. 100 years at demanding a sacrifice to the Roman god for 100 years. Come on.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
No bureaucracy would last that long.
Yeah, I figured you guys would know right away that was BS, but there's just so many myths about how Christians were persecuted for that amount of time. I figured I'd throw that in there.
They're still persecuted. You ever been
yeah.
to the U.S.? They're so hard done.
They're not allowed to. Yeah, they're not allowed to hurt gay people, and so that's persecution.
They're so sad. They're very sad.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But so the edict though was by Emperor Decius, but it only lasted for about 18 months. Punishments included fines, arrests, tortures, and it did include execution if you made too much of a fuss about it. Continuing our story, Decius wanted to make sure his edict was being followed, so he decided to visit every town in the empire to make sure everyone was worshiping him, because that's what leaders do, I guess. Of course, our 7 sleepers rejected this edict with a long-winded testimony that can be summarized as oh, hell no. So the Emperor Decius gave them a warning and 3 days to change their minds. Carefully weighing their options, they decided to go on the lam and get the hell out of Dodge. They sold their belongings, gave it to the poor, because that's what saints do, and left town. God led them to a cave outside of town, but since they didn't have any Wi-Fi and couldn't order anything from AdamandEve.com, they spent their whole time praying instead, which AdamandEve.com sounds a lot funner. But so they would send one person into town each day and give more money away to the poor and find out if they were still in trouble. And after discovering that the emperor was PO'd, they decided to pray even more to God to help. And they eventually fell asleep. And boy, did they sleep! It's like the only thing they had to drink was NyQuil and Benadryl, because they literally slept for ages. But either way, while this was happening, the emperor was like, "Hey, whatever happened to those Christians I threatened with death, so that they and then let go and told them to come back and worship me, or I kill them." Surprised and angry, they never showed up. He ordered a search across the land, but the troops found nothing. So next question, what happened next? Multiple choice. The emperor realized that he had better things to do and went back to running the empire. B, he never finds them and they slept undiscovered for 372 years. C, he discovered the 7 sleepers by having their skip the dishes driver followed to the cave. And D, the emperor finds them by threatening their families, who gladly sold them out.
Oh, I like the skip the dishes.
I hope it's D.
Yeah.
I'm going with D. They remain undiscovered for 372 years.
Yeah, no, it was D. Their families were the story was very clear that these families weren't true Christians. And were vilified for selling out their fammy, but they were like, "Hey, we don't got a problem with the emperor; they're over there." So the
Christianity might include insomnia or the other word.
Yeah. So either way, the cave was discovered. The emperor saw them sleeping so peacefully, and suddenly decided he didn't want to kill them anymore. So he decided to bury them alive instead.
That's healthy.
So he had the cave closed up with giant stones. How do we know this? Well, next up, truth, myth, or balderdash. The emperor, it's something like that. The emperor had 2 slaves who were secretly Christian and learned that God had placed the 7 sleepers into a magical sleep. They then recorded the events on a clay tablet and placed it beside their bodies in the cave where they slept.
I'm gonna say balderdash.
No.
I mean, it might be a myth. It's still balderdash, but
that is how the myth goes. Now, I'm not exactly sure how 2 slaves can move these stones that 7 men were supposedly not going to be able to. But even though it does sound like balderdash, it's best to just roll with it. It's a roll the stone. That's a bad joke.
That's most of
Kevin
Christianity.
isn't the only one with the dad jokes.
But anyway, fast forward 372 years when the Christian Emperor Theodosius is running the show, and when the 7 sleepers finally awaken. Now, this is where the story and the math kind of confuses me, because Theodosius the First was emperor 129 to 142 years after the story takes place. Theodosius II was 158 to 200 years later, and the next one doesn't show up for another 465 years, long after the story takes place. So somebody's having trouble doing the math. I don't know how they got 372 years, but just goes to further
mysterious ways.
Yeah,
God is not on our time scale, Troy. He
That's
has his own time scale.
Mysterious ways. we'll
Very
go with
mysterious. That. It's so mysterious we can't do math.
The program, man.
But either way, so they were found by a local landowner who wanted the cave opened up so that they had a place to put their sheep at night. I assume the sleepers couldn't sleep through all the bleeding because soon afterwards they woke up.
They have the perfect opportunity to be counting sheep.
Yeah, exactly. One sheep, two sheep. Okay, here goes another 300 years. But so when they woke up, they figured they only slept for a single night, so they sent their buddy into town to buy some food. And if he gets caught, they suddenly decide that they'll all be martyred together because no one likes a saint who hides in a cave. So next question, multiple choice. When he goes to town, he realizes there sure are a lot of Christians and crosses suddenly all over the place. But things started to go astray when he tried to purchase some bread and buy some bread with a nearly 400-year-old coin. When the local Christians discovered this coin, how did they respond? A, it's a miracle. Obviously, God put these guys in a magical sleep for several centuries, and they just woke up. Hallelujah. Number B. They assumed he found a stash of ancient gold and thought, let's roll him for some ching-ching.
That's a very Christian way of doing it.
That's a very Republican thing to do.
Yeah. C, he must be a witch. Burn him.
Nah, that was my answer. That was my answer.
I go with C.
Yeah. Or D, the vendor asked about the coin, they reached the conclusion that he was asleep for centuries.
C.
So
I'm going with C. I'm going with
C.
It was B. When the vendor didn't believe the explanation of how he earned the coins, he assumed he must have found an ancient hoard of gold buried centuries ago, and he wanted in on the action. It didn't help much that the sleeper was being evasive because he didn't want to get caught by the emperor, but he was and he wasn't aware that, and he still wasn't aware yet that he really, really, really overslept. Soon others got involved.
Imagine the morning breath he had. He's trying to.
No toothbrushes back then.
Whoa, dude!
I'm just gonna say that I would be if I was asleep for 400 years and the whole world, the world had to change. It was like Captain America was asleep for 70 years, and he was like, "Whoa, everything's changed. This is not the world." So he didn't notice 400 years of change when he.
Yeah, exactly. Yesterday Christians were being persecuted, and the mayor mentioned got you tortured or whatever. But today, they're all over the place with crosses and churches. Oh, it's nothing suspicious here.
Weird.
But either way, soon others got involved, and they tied a rope around his neck, dragged him to the public square, demanding to know where the gold was.
There we go. That sounds more Christian.
Yep. So since no one recognized him, they figured he must be a stranger, so they threatened to lynch and torture him until he told them where to find the gold.
He started.
That does sound Christian.
Yeah, it does. But with all the ruckus, the local church heard about it, and soon they were brought before the church magistrate. At this point, being martyred by the Romans was looking pretty good right about now. But
at least the Romans were efficient.
Yeah, exactly. But next up, truth, myth, or balderdash. When he was brought before the church magistrate, his coins were taken from him. The magistrate then speaks about the dating of the coins, how they have long since existed, and turns to the imprisoned sleeper and said, "These coins are remarkable. Now show me the money. We know you must have found a hoard of gold somewhere." So if you're expecting the church to come in and do the pious thing, it's
no.
But to speed things along, that is how the myth goes. Throughout the interrogation, the man eventually realizes realizes he's been asleep for 372 years, and when the church magistrate threatened to bind him and scourge him daily until he told the truth, he finally tells him everything and takes them to the cave to prove it. There they discovered the other sleepers and the clay tablet. And if you remember, the two slaves put the clay tablet there. So they read the tablet, and so the fact checking checks out. It's another miracle. Hallelujah. It's like they found a cave with 7 Lazaruses inside. So everyone fell to their knees and praised the saints for such a miracle, because that's how Christians rolled back then. This was such big news. The bishop wrote to the Emperor Theodosius, who came right away, fell to his knees before the sleepers of the cave, praised God, and wished them a happy future. The end. Well, not quite. There's different versions of the story. One being the sleepers died shortly afterwards, because you can't have a saint without martyrdom. And in the Muslim version, the sleepers drop dead in the cave as soon as the emperor, or in their version, the governor, shows up. But one last question, multiple choice. What is the most popular moral to the story? A, that Christians became greedy and unloving towards strangers. B, that God really can bring everyone back to life just like he will in the end times. C, early Christians can't do math. Or D, Christians have been making up stories for centuries.
Yeah, I'll go with D.
D and A?
I would go with the secret answer E. Fasting and sleeping are the way to eternal youth.
Yeah. And NyQuil and Benadryl. No, so, for the good sleep. But yeah, so the answer was B. The story was popular for a really long time, and in both Christian and Islam, it taught about how our bodies really can survive in the ground until the end of time, and God can bring us all back.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he raises us, because like back then, you didn't go straight to heaven. You stay in the ground until the end of time. But yeah, I got to agree.
Jehovah's Witnesses believe that
they still do.
Yeah, I know, but I saw that sounds terrible. Like, are you is your consciousness aware that you're stuck in the ground? Like, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
No, you're in that nightmare that you wake. You're in that nightmare where you're in high school and you're naked in front of the entire class. That's what you're dreaming for. The 372 years. That's what.
Oh no! Oh no!
I remember when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, being taken to a Pentecostal church where they would preach about the New Jerusalem coming down from the sky at the end of times. And as time went on, 30 plus years later, all of a sudden it's like, no, we're going straight to heaven, and those MFOs are being burned in hell. It's like, so it's Christians don't realize how much their doctrines change. Like, even within the last 30, 40 years, Christians from 40 years ago or 50 years ago wouldn't recognize what they have today. But either way, surprise, surprise, I finished.
Yeah,
without Kevin having to tell me to hurry up.
Yeah.
Record. Yay!
It's kind of funny they never realized that. 300 years, 372, almost 400 years, language changes. If we were to take us right now and go back 400 years in the past, we're not communicating with English-speaking people. We can't. No. We just wouldn't be able to. So I don't understand how you can't figure this out. Anyway. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. We got Andrew waiting there. What time is it?
Yes.
3:04.
We can go with him. That's all right.
You sure?
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, here I am thinking I didn't make us run late for once.
Well, we started late,
good.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, we always start late. All right. Let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll be back with Andrew Pledger, and we'll be talking about his podcast. So stay with us. All right, our next guest is Helen. What do you so kind of do?
Sure, I will introduce our guest. Our guest today is Andrew Pledger. He is a survivor, content creator, and activist who uses social media to share his story and inspire others. He is a religious trauma survivor who was homeschooled from kindergarten to all the way through high school and raised in a fundamentalist Christian cult, independent fundamental Baptist movement. He brings awareness to spiritual and religious abuse. Being a part of the LGBTQ community and experiencing religious trauma has inspired him to pursue psychology to help survivors. After being homeschooled, he found his way to Bob Jones University and was expelled for sharing his story and denouncing fundamentalist teaching. He is now giving other survivors a voice through his podcast, Speaking Up with Andrew Pledger, and his upcoming podcast, Surviving BJU, a Christian Cult. Welcome, Andrew, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Helen, and everyone else. I'm so excited for this interview.
Well, you've only been here for a few minutes.
Well,
but
someone's got him fooled. So.
Yeah, we keep trying to fool people that were really nice people. I think we're just too much.
Oh, I thought we were fooling people that we know how to interview.
I know, listen, I'm trying to cultivate my cult. So, that's the point.
Well, Helen, you just gave a very good introduction, but maybe you'd be so kind to maybe it was a bit of a bio, but you want to go a bit deeper as to who you are?
Yeah, so for those who do not know me, my name is Andrew Pledger, and I was raised in a religious cult that was a part of the independent fundamental Baptist movement. And for people who aren't familiar with this movement, and from now on in the interview, I'll refer to it as the IFB, just as that's easier to say, just so people will know from now on. But yeah, so I was raised in that environment. I thought, in the beginning at least, I thought I was in a family that was very normal. We went to church. I was homeschooled my entire life for the purpose of being indoctrinated into the IFB and to stay in it the rest of my life and then bring up a family and side of it and continue that cycle. And, I was indoctrinated from a young age, and I took it as truth because, I have my parents who are homeschooling me, who only give me or provide information that goes along with the IFB's teachings and really fundamentalist Christianity's teachings. It's been interesting to watch the Shiny Happy People documentary that just came out on Amazon Prime about the Duggars. Because, I've never seen an episode of the Duggar Show, like the 19 Kids and Counting or any of their spinoffs. Like I grew up in that kind of environment, so I had no idea.
Spinoffs?
I'm pretty sure they did. Yes.
I was just watching it too, and I swear I have basically a very similar childhood as well. Yeah, and it's almost like it was kind of traumatizing because it was like a lot of it shit. I'm like, oh man, I forgot all about that, and now it's like bring it back to the surface.
Let me get this straight. Let me get this straight, guys. We have like two versions of Cosmos, but we have spin-offs of the Duggars. Really? This is why we're doomed. This is why we're doomed as species. We're not going to.
Listen, TLC loves their Christian exploitation TV shows. Like they have Welcome to Plathville, which is my jam, because it's fascinating watching people do deconstruction from inside a religion. It's interesting. So,
Yeah, it's what we're watching the Happy Shiny People right now. We just got past episode 2, but. What blew my mind, because when I was younger, I remember parents within other churches talking about blanket therapy, and I thought it was just like something that they did to bond with their kids. And then I'm watching the show, and they're talking about how you put your baby on the blanket, and you put something they'll want off the blanket out of reach, and then every time they go to reach for it, you spank them. And it's like that's some pretty hardcore. Not just abuse, but like mental conditioning. It's like how are you, like when you grow up, how are you going to even be willing to question something if you're conditioned and trained that independent thought or stepping out of line is equals punishment. So it's.
I'll have to thank the pros for that and train up a child. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a. But either way, that's my tangent. So like being homeschooled, Andrew, like once you got older and older religion, did you find that you had to put in a whole bunch of extra work to kind of like catch up on all the stuff that you weren't taught, or did you just focus on psychology and stuff? Or
Oof. Yeah, no, it was really hard. Yeah, being homeschooled my entire life, being indoctrinated into this system and being subjected to a lot of the same teachings as the IBLP. And, when I was done with homeschooling, I could read and I could write, but, and spell and all that, but that was about it. Very like terrible math, no science. No, I mean, the science in the fundamentalist program, it wasn't really science at all, and no sex education. So, I'm still overcoming, and I think I will for a long time, educational neglect. And I am a major learner, avid reader, and I love learning different things. I've definitely done like a deep dive into psychology, especially the past year, but I am like starting to like branch out to other things to give myself more of a general education and catch up on things I missed growing up, which I'm trying to give myself some compassion for, because it's a lot to like make up for.
So when you went to Bob Jones University,
what? You went to Tom Jones University?
Now, will you stop that, Kevin?
That's amazing. Andrew's going to do a version of it. Not unusual.
Well, listen, when you go there, you learn to sing really well, and do Vegas shows. That's why you go to Bob Jones. Tom Jones University. So when you went there, do they have more of an expanded curriculum, or is it just take a lot of the stuff that they're hoping that the homeschool group learn?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Bob Jones University, which is a fundamentalist Christian college for people who don't know, it was started in 1927, and they are now at least an accredited college. So they have to have general education courses that are required of secular colleges. Now, how they get around this is, yes, they have these courses, but they filter these things, these secular things, through their fundamentalist worldview. They're like, yes, this is what the secular world says, but this is the truth. This is the right way. So I remember I was required to take a science class at Bob Jones University. It was called Essential Science. It was like one of the worst classes I ever took there. And it covered like all kinds of like science backgrounds. And and it was like every 2 weeks, a different science. And the point of the class was, hear all the secular arguments and all these different sciences against our faith. We're going to try our best to indoctrinate you to be able to argue this, to debunk this. And in some of our homework and discussion posts, we were given like science concepts, and it's like, okay, now argue against this with scripture.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Now, what has me kind of curious is like, I remember like fundamental science class back in like junior high, when you start getting into like doing science, and there's like a big focus on the scientific method and how to and using a methodology to ascertain, what can be determined to be true, and what is just like a bad guess or a bad hypothesis. Like in a teaching background to like that, like in a Christian university like that, do they go over methodologies to like make sure that you can dissect what's true and what isn't, what can be proven, what can't? Or is that just going to create too many problems with their theological claims or whatever?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was never a science major, but I'm sure hopefully they teach the science a scientific method in their science majors. But yeah, in that essential science class, maybe they went over it. I don't remember them really focusing on that. It's not in my memory. I don't remember them emphasizing the scientific method. And even growing up, there were maybe some hints of it, but they were never like, this is how you determine truth. Truth was you filter everything through the fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible. And, you know, if science, like, you know, in air quotes, confirms our beliefs, yay, like, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, it's false.
Yeah.
So not science at all. And just, yeah. And the essential science class at Bob Jones, oh, and like they even got into like sexuality, which I, you know, me being a gay person in the closet at this strict Christian college, a really cult where I'm not allowed to even be there or exist, I did not participate in any of those assignments around sexuality and like very homophobic, anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ plus things. And I even had the teacher reach out to me about it and like stop me in the hallway and ask me, you know, oh, is everything okay? Because like I was always a good student. I turned in everything. So I did everything in that class except the assignments related. And, you know, I even put the wrong answers purposely on the test around sexuality just to rebel. Like, no, like I'm not going with your ideology.
Yeah, I remember my early days of Christianity. And you would have like a lot of scientific arguments against the homosexual community. What they never tell you is these arguments are from like decades ago, when where the gay community was expected to hide and keep out of place, and and the studies were extremely biased and not properly vetted. But there's definitely scientific arguments that they use is just really bad science. So I can see that. I can see something like that, like being very emotionally discouraging on somebody, knowing one thing and being taught they're supposed to believe something else. Like that must have had some negative effects on you more than just having a few teachers call you out. So.
Yeah, like being in an environment where you're also exposed to a lot of homophobic rhetoric in like the preaching. So for example, we had chapel 4 days a week. This was basically like a church service on campus that was like 40 minutes long. And like during this, it would be usually like a worship song type hymn. And then as a whole university of like a couple thousand students, like in unison, we would have to say this creed that they would put up on the screen of, you know, what we believed, and we had to believe it to go to this school. So we would all be saying this creed in unison, like a very, very culty moment. And then you would have a sermon after that. Most of them were very shame and fear based, and every once in a while they would be kind of good, I guess you would say, very loving, but it really mirrored like a narcissistic abuse cycle of treating you terribly, breaking you down, and then every once in a while like bringing you back up to get you kind of emotionally addicted or stuck or trapped in the system. And that was really hard because I heard a lot of rhetoric that in that environment that I grew up in my whole life, and it triggered a lot of religious trauma. And I really lived in a lot of it going there. I lived in like a state of just disassociation. That was like my go-to trauma response, was to like mentally check out, detach, like my mind detaching from my body, I guess, in a sense, in order to emotionally deal with it. Because, you know, still struggling with anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, all these different things as I'm like dealing with the trauma from my childhood and dealing with the trauma of being gay in that environment. And I was also harassed and bullied a lot at that school when people started to notice me. And a thing about Bob Jones is that when you're an out-of-state student and you're between the ages of 18 to 22, you are required to live in their dormitories. You cannot live off campus. And the reason they do this is in these dormitories, you are under a hierarchical leadership of just, so, you know, the leader at the top in this dorm, or each dorm, is the dorm supervisor, and then under the dorm supervisor is a dorm mentor, and then under the dorm mentor are the 3 RAs, and that stands for like residence assistant. There's one on each floor. The residence assistant would they would check your room while you were in chapel. There would be room checks every day while you were in chapel. We had room jobs that we had to do, and they would make sure we were out of the dorms when times we had to be. So like chapel, church, different events. And then under the RAs, there were discipleship group leaders, which we were all forced to be in a discipleship group. And there were several or many on every floor, and they had leaders over it. And if you didn't go to this, your leader would report you. You would get 25 demerits. And, underneath the discipleship group leaders were the assistant discipleship group leaders. So there's all these people monitoring, watching, people that can like report you, give you demerits. And for the rules, you couldn't listen to any secular music. You couldn't really watch TV. It had to be like a PG rating, and like movies couldn't be above PG-13. No queer relationships, no physical contact with people of the opposite gender. So many
So this
rules.
was a university, not a cult compound, right?
That sounds exhausting. Like it sounds so exhausting to follow all those rules.
Yeah, and like it's interesting that you said that, Troy, because when I described this to someone on another podcast, they said, "Oh, that's a cult compound." Mm-hmm. And that was just really strange to me. I was like, what? It was like, but yeah, that's really what it was. It was a cult compound where we were all forced to live together under all this constant monitoring. We were indoctrinated through discipleship groups in these dorms. And this university, the president, they would write a special booklet that would cover all the sermons of that semester. And we had to use these books, and, it wasn't available to the public at all. It was just for us. And it was handed out to every student, this material that they made. And we had to, again, we're forced to go to chapel, hear these messages, and then just reinforce again through these booklets that we have to do in each of these groups, and go through each week and have to discuss this. So yeah, you're treated like your children. At times you're treated like you're criminals. Mm-hmm. And I remember an instance of really one of my first times really breaking the rules, and breaking the rules was really hard for me. I was a real follower my whole life. I was a people pleaser, and going against authority meant going against God. And growing up in the cult that I was raised in, like the IBLP, you never disobey authority. You obey authority no matter what, and there are consequences for that. And, I was trained and told that, if you disobey authority, my parents told me that God will shorten your life, or that's a sin, God will punish you. And growing up in the IFB, they also teach you to hit a child until they submit and obey. And that's the way I was raised. So I was hit until I obeyed. And so I was a very submissive child, because I learned very early on that if I didn't obey, I would be hit. And so I was obedient my whole life, all the rules, had so much anxiety about disobeying the rules. And so when I get to this college, learning to overcome that programming was so hard, because I actually thought that God was going to punish me. And they use this like scary God figure or caricature or whatever to scare you. Like, we're always watching, and he knows your thoughts. He knows what you're thinking. Oh my God. And so you're monitoring yourself. You're monitoring yourself. And there's a culture of snitching that takes it even further. If you see someone breaking the rules at that cult and you don't report them, and it's found out that you knew that they broke the rules and you didn't report them, you are treated as if you broke that rule yourself, and you're just as much in trouble. So there's this culture of everyone snitching on each other. And so you really have to find people that aren't bought into this, that you can trust, that you can be yourself, that you can break rules, listen to secular music, just be human. But I remember, sorry, what were you saying?
That's insane. I mean, like Troy said, so it does sound like a compound, and with things like a dorm mentor, that sounds like a bad Harry Potter villain. You know, we got the dorm mentor coming around.
I want to say for anyone that is listening, if you're having any trauma responses to this, take a break. You know, if you need to step away, step away. If you need to take a break and come back, that's fine. Like, take care of yourself, because the things we're talking about right now are actually very heavy, and I don't want anyone to feel like they had to like clutch through this or anything like that, because it is a lot.
Yeah.
And while
it
you
might
take
be
a break,
might be good to also mention that there's resources through RFR, Recovering from
Yes,
Religion.
please contact recoveringfromreligion.org, and we can help you if you have had issues with doubt and non-belief, and also contact the Secular Therapy Project if you need help with your religious trauma.
yeah, and if you just need to take a break, go to adamneve.com/Ellie.
So, Andrew, like my experience is there's a lot of homophobia in Christianity. So, like, did you find yourself in situations where you were accused of doing something gay when you were just doing something that was just something that normal people do, or it's or because people knew that you were like, were you in the closet at college, or did people know that you were?
Yeah. I was in the closet for the first couple of years at the college, and like it was, despite that, it was still obvious to some people who then harassed and attacked me. And yeah, growing up, I didn't realize, like, I didn't have the language to know that I was gay. Like, I always heard the term sodomite growing up, very dehumanizing language. And, I was a very homophobic person growing up, because that's what I was taught. And they painted this awful picture, like they were compared to murderers, pedophiles, just all these different things. And, I've been hearing this story a lot growing up, the Sodom and Gomorrah story in the Old Testament. And, my parents, hearing them say so many hateful things about gay people and how they deserve to be destroyed and killed in that city, and for that punishment. So growing up in that, when I finally recognized my own sexuality, all that homophobia that I had became internalized homophobia. And I just, so much self-hatred. I went into such a deep depression, really just stopped eating for a while, just so depressed in bed, and really just feeling so unsafe in my own environment. There was no safe place to be, really. And so, dealing with that, it was really difficult. But there were a lot of different trauma responses and things that my mind did to adjust to that and like survive. And so, eventually I made my way to Bob Jones University. And, at that point I was ready to leave the IFB, and I did not want to go to a fundy college, but I really wanted to, get an education, and Bob Jones was accredited. And my parents, number one, they wouldn't help me pay for anything else. And like, number two, you don't go against your parents' wishes in that environment. And they talked about so much, and I was trained that, God will hurt you or punish you if you disobey your parents. And I remember my mom really training me and my brothers that, even when you're an adult, I'll still be an authority figure and you'll still need to obey me. And I remember, especially at 17 and 18, being like, in my mind, like, that's not going to fucking happen. No way. No way.
Could I ask real quick? Did you have the, like, they tell you can choose, because I was pansexual at the time, but I was raised the same way. So, and I remember always thinking like, yeah, you can choose, because look, I can, and and I can choose whichever way I want. And that was that a big part of it though? Was people telling you that you can choose that?
I mean, it's interesting because they gave me like options of fundy colleges, so they made it seem like I had options, but it was the same environment, just different group, really, or different locations. And at that point, I was still so indoctrinated. I was afraid of going against my parents, and I knew I needed at that point to get away from them. And, my parents, they had really wanted me to go to this college called Pensacola Christian college, which produced the fundamentalist homeschool curriculum that I was raised on. And this was a school, it was more, believe it or not, it was much worse than Bob Jones University. Like, you could not leave the PCC, Pensacola Christian College. You couldn't leave PCC's campus during the day or any time without signing out and telling them where you were going, what time, what you would like, when you would be back, and who you were with. And you weren't allowed to attend any other churches besides the campus church that they had. So once you went to Pensacola, you were basically on campus arrest. And to me, I'm like, that sounds like a prison. Like, I don't
straight up
want.
I actually have my book right here. Have you? It's creation. It's like science and creation.
I love that, from science and the Bible.
Yeah, it's like, and it was written by Gish.
Any science in the Bible?
Hold on, Helen. Hold on. We haven't properly tested the way to put stripes on animals to let them sleep in front of sticks they put in the ground. We haven't properly tested that yet. There might be a chance.
Right. But no, it was written by Dwayne Gish, which I don't know if you're familiar with the fallacy or the tactic called the Gish Gallop.
Yes.
That was his thing. Was like, and it's basically just rattling off a bunch of bullshit as fast as you can, and in a debate, and you can't address each thing, kind of thing, you know.
Oh.
And so it was that guy created the curriculum for science that I was in. It was
That's
science.
Awesome.
That's crazy.
I learned something new today.
Me too.
Same here. So it sounds like throughout your time at university, eventually things came to a head, and you mentioned that you were kicked out. How did that work with your family? Like, were you excommunicated, or were they like, had they eventually come around, or like, how is Christianity still affecting you now?
Yeah. It was interesting because I ended up deconverting from Christianity during my time there, like, and not telling anyone, and eventually then telling everyone. But during that time, I was able to dig into, and like, really, I think it was my second year of college, I found the term religious trauma, and it just completely clicked for me, because in that environment, you are blamed and shamed. It's never the system. It's never the teachings. It's always you. You're not spiritual enough. You're not praying enough. It's always on you. It's no one else. It's no authority figures. So that's what I've been taught my whole life, and shamed and blamed for mental health. At this point, finding this term is so validating, and like checking off every single thing with the criteria and the symptoms of religious trauma. And, you know, then hearing that it was comparable to complex PTSD was so helpful for me. And it was a lot to process, and it's something that made me really uncomfortable, and I just shoved it aside, forgot about it. That was too much to process, that, oh, my whole life I've been abused and I've been traumatized. Like, that was too much to just think about all at once. So it was something that I just put away. And as I continued on, eventually at this school, I ended up being discipled by a leader, and eventually it turned into conversion therapy. And I thankfully was like able to say no to that and have like enough autonomy and intuition to say no. And it was just a really toxic, really abusive situation. And after the ending that relationship, I was like, you know what, I'm deconverting. I'm debunking all these claims of like inerrancy, creation. And those were like kind of the main things. And once those fell apart, it was really easy to continue questioning. And, you know, I made a photo series on religious trauma at Bob Jones because I studied photography and visual arts, and I ended up releasing it in January of 2022. And Josh Harris, the I Kissed Dating Goodbye author, interviewed me, and I was on his Instagram Live sharing my story and sharing the photo series with, I thought, people who would enjoy it. And yeah, that's when I publicly denounced fundamentalist Christianity. I came out and I talked about religious trauma, bringing awareness to it. And Bob Jones, they expelled me because, you know, my last semester of my senior year at the school, which, you know, I transferred and I finished school like a month ago. So I'm done with college now, thankfully, my undergrad. So that's
because
nice.
For a second there,
Oh,
you
that's
look really crushed that you got expelled from Bob Jones University.
Yes,
Are you
yes.
okay? Do you need a moment?
Yeah, I know it's a lot has happened. But I've been grateful to continue on and to be in this space. But with my parents' reaction, and to answer the question, it was interesting and really different the way Bob Jones handled it. Because what I had heard from other people was Bob Jones usually called the parents first, and they never let the student know that they were expelled. And the parents would show up and pick their adult children up and take them back home. But I think because of the interview and the things I talked about with my upbringing and my parents, I think Bob Jones thought that they were going to put me in a dangerous situation. So they did not do that. And also my parents were not big fans of Bob Jones. It took a little bit for them to be okay to send me there, because Bob Jones was not KJV only. And the IFB is like, you have to have the King James Version of the Bible. That's the truth. That's the only way. So to have Bob Jones not be that, take that stance, that was a little bit for them. And the first year I went there in 2018, that was the first time they allowed women to wear pants to class.
Wow.
Ooh, thank you.
How progressive.
Oh my
Were they allowed
Yeah.
to have their hair down also, or
unreal. Yeah.
or
I don't-
did the women still have to have the Christian bun thing happening?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the hairstyles were required of.
Yeah.
They could not have their hair short. I know that they could not have any kind of masculine looking features. I know that at least. And they couldn't have, we couldn't have any colored hair at all either, or any, I think they changed the rules to it had to be a natural hair color if we dyed our hair. And, kind of back to my parents. So they didn't tell them, I was called into this room just at a random time at night, no warning ahead of time. They're like, hey, we need you to come. And it was my dorm supervisor that was like, meet me in my office downstairs. Some staff are going to be here. We have some things to talk about. So I was expelled for what they said was denouncing the teachings and not believing. They never brought up my sexuality at all because they didn't want legal trouble. I don't think, and they've gotten in the hot water for that in the past. And, honestly, when they told me that, we didn't tell your parents, we're going to leave that to you to tell them. And, when I did that, I thought they were going to cut me off, because in the past we had a family member who came out of the closet and who left the faith, and everyone in our family, we had to shun them because this was the way to bring them back. It kind of like they wanted that prodigal son moment. They wanted them to just suffer and then come crawling back, repenting. But that never happened. And I think they regretted that they cut off that family member and they built a life of their own. And so having that in my memory of my family shunning this person, I was like, oh, this is probably going to happen, but it's okay. And I think I'd forgotten to mention earlier that, during the time at Bob Jones, I was able to connect with a family that was outside of the Bob Jones group. I explored outside of, and I think I forgot, there's so much to my story, but there's a approved church list, or a pre-approved list of churches you had to pick from, and you were forced to go to church twice a week to this list of churches. And I went outside of that list to progressive and affirming churches, and one of them I met this family and told them about my situation, and they lived across the street from Bob Jones. So I was able to connect with them, and I kind of live a double life where I could go away to their house and go with them to this progressive church and not be so stressed and worried about being monitored and watched and subjected to these rules. But so when I told my parents I was kicked out, they were just shocked, because I have been a goody two shoes my entire life. I never got in trouble. I always followed the rules. I always people please, never express any of my needs at all, or even expressing opinions. So they were really shocked to hear that I was expelled, and they were devastated, and they were silent for a few minutes when I told them.
Yeah, so you're saying that you didn't become gay or got kicked out of school because you love sinning so much, right?
They just told me that because I denounced or no longer believed. And when you go to that college and you apply to go there, you have to agree with their teachings, and then when you go there, you sign a covenant after you read, like, I know, which is such a culty thing.
Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
like, because I went to college and I never had to do any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing like you really touched on, and like outside of the cultiness, you can like I've experienced the same thing in certain churches that I've gone to over the years. It's the mental conditioning and the personal shaming and the personal self-loathing and putting yourself down and judging yourself and being critical of yourself. And it's like a culture where you push yourself down as far as you can, so that the church can lift you back up, and then they call that feeling of relief that you get, like the Spirit of God or so forth. But it's where you're getting into psychology and stuff now, like do you find that's like a common theme that people have to deal with, like trying to deconvert not just from believing in a religion, but from a mindset of judgment and self-loathing. And it's because that's the darker side of Christianity that I don't think a lot of people realize or understand. And when you're in the church, you just don't see the forest through the trees. You don't realize that calling you a sinner every day and saying how you're nothing without Jesus, you don't realize that you're being mentally conditioned. But it really has a harsh effect on people, I find. Mm-hmm. So it's so as you're moving into psychology and stuff, do you find that's an important focus that you focus on, or what do you think is most important for people to realize during deconversion?
Yeah. It was fascinating when I left, because I realized, I'm like, okay, like, you can leave fundamentalism, but fundamentalism doesn't leave you. So for me, immediately when I was expelled, I took a break that semester, and I immediately started going to therapy. And it was intriguing to me because there had been this inner critic that I had all of my life because of all, like you were just saying, these harmful teachings where you're put down, you're disgusting, you're a sinner, you deserve nothing good, you deserve eternal damnation, God thinks you're disgusting, you're an abomination, all these things. It becomes this inner critic, and the thing that they would tell me was, this harsh voice inside of you, that's Satan and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you put this voice inside of me. You indoctrinated me. And, it takes a long time, and it's something I'm still working on and dealing with, was, that indoctrination of this inner critic that's just constantly putting down. And to me, part of that conditioning was you not resting, always staying busy. And this was something growing up in Bob Jones, you always stayed busy. And this is something I still struggle with at times, just constantly doing things and feeling shame for resting and for taking care of myself. And, I've been in therapy a year and a half now, which is not a very short time, but I've been happy with the progress that's been made to deal with that shame and that blame and that inner critic. And it's something that, I still struggle with at times. And it's something, yes, a lot of people do deal with. And, yes, deconstructing the beliefs is one thing, like the teachings, but like really dealing with yourself and trying to reach a psychologically healthy state is something that is hard. And the thing that is hard for people is you might not logically believe that you are a bad person at all. But the thing is, trauma and these messages are stored in the emotional part of our brains, the limbic system. And so when the limbic system is triggered, you can't really logically get rid of that. You have to emotionally deal with it. And something that has been helpful for me is hypnotherapy, because it helps really open up. It slows down and calms down your prefrontal cortex in the logical area of your brain and opens up the limbic system where you can start to process these things. And, for me, I remember like recently in a hypnotherapy session with my therapist, and like, it took me a year to cry in front of my therapist just because of just the shame around emotions, the shame around mental health, and when I had emotional issues growing up, I was like shoved in a room by myself and shamed for it. And I couldn't be around other people experiencing that. So I learned that I couldn't internalize that, and learned I can't express these things in front of other people. I had to put on this happy face, pretend, do it for the betterment and the mood of the group. And so, I remember recently, like a major breakthrough in therapy for my therapist was something I just didn't really consciously realize was deep down inside of me was this deep belief still of like not believing that I deserve love, because I struggle so much with really developing healthy relationships with people, and it's something that I want to be able to do that. It's so hard for me to get close to people and to open up. I've just put up this like iron wall or shield that won't let people in, and it's something I'm learning to take down. But part of that healing is really going from a place of fear to love, a place of disconnection to connection. And in order to do that, to connect with other people, you have to learn to love yourself. You have to connect to yourself. You have to connect with, what do I believe? What do I think? What is my body feeling? Connecting with your sexuality, connecting with every part of yourself. That's a big part of like that psychological healing.
Well, so what you're describing is what I went through, but I was recovering from sexual violence. And when you have those thoughts in your head of shame and obviously I'm not a good person, or this wouldn't have happened to me, and all these the critic that keeps gnawing at you, and religion gets its grubby hands into everything, even as someone that experienced sexual violence, those religious messages are playing around. I did something to deserve it. And when you deconstruct, and especially when you recognize that you are a victim of abuse, and it's hard to get comfortable with that, because nobody wants to be a victim. Nobody wants to think that, when you think that you deserve violence in a certain form, it takes a while to get to a place where you're like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. This was what other people are putting onto me. And also to recognize the people that have abused you were abused and had bad things happen to them. And it's a cycle.
Yes.
And learning, not forgiveness, but having empathy for them. I haven't forgiven the people that have hurt me, but I have empathy for them, because I have to recognize that they went through trauma too, and they were taught horrible things. They just never had someone to support them. They never had anyone to, kind of say like, hey, this is really bad. You need, and I think that's a hard thing to swallow, because you want to hate the people that hurt you. But when I went through therapy, that was, and learning to not only love yourself, but extend a little bit of empathy for the people that hurt you. And I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying that was part of my healing process.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how you dug into that, and it made me think of the Shining Happy People documentary, where someone mentioned that these teachings and these environments, they create the perfect victims, because you have to be quiet, submit, and obey, and you're taught that it's your fault, and at times you're told that this is God testing you. He's going to be using this for his own glory, to praise him, which is, I hate it. I hate that message so much. Yeah.
Gross. Yeah.
So, Andrew, I mean, you've always had a harrowing journey, and but for people that are currently in this journey, that might be listening to this and kind of recognize themselves into what happened to you, what would you recommend for these people to do?
Yes. I would recommend if you can, which is so hard, have a place where you can be alone with your own thoughts, because high control religions, cults, they don't want you to be alone with your own thoughts. They always keep you busy. They always keep you indoctrinated. Start noticing what is it like to not be in this environment, because when you're in it, it's all you know and it's so normalized. So I think if you can get into that place where you can get away for how long, and notice what you are feeling and thinking in those moments. And it takes time to be able to do that. And I've talked to so many survivors who were like, I was afraid to be alone. I loved keeping busy. I love that structure. And like, that's what they want. They want to keep you busy. They don't want you to think for yourself. They tell you what to think, what to believe, how to act, like all these things, and what emotions to feel, what emotions you can't feel. So just seeing what that's like. And I think the pandemic was a great avenue for people to start to notice and see when we're all forced to go into lockdown. A lot of people got to see what it was like to not participate in these high control environments and these religions. And it opened the eyes of a lot of people. So that's the first thing. Get time alone. Number 2, I would say start slowly learning to listen to your thoughts and not fight them like they teach you to do. Just let them come through. And it takes time, because the cognitive dissonance is really emotionally hard to deal with, because you're just given this structure and it's so emotionally addicting, honestly. Just all this certainty and having supposedly all the answers and knowing what's going to happen. It's emotionally satisfying in a way. But it's stifling your growth, and it's stopping you from your potential. So just let those thoughts in. And it's like, if you have the truth, why are they telling you to be worried about other information? Why are they telling you to be worried about your own thoughts if it's the only way and it's the truth? That's a major red flag. And I remember when I started publicly questioning the Bible and this belief system, a member from my cult that I grew up in, like, reached out to me and was like, "You're not allowed to do this. You're not supposed to do that. You're not allowed to question the Bible."
Watch me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another resource would be good too is for people that are wondering, am I in a cult? Would be Stephen Hassan's bite model.
Yes.
And read up on that and kind of look at you have to kind of pull back your emotions of your connections within the religious structure that you're in, but it will help you kind of diagnose, like, is this healthy? Is this a good place for us? And you have to be ready to do it, but it's a good way to understand if you are in a cult.
Oh, yes.
If you have to ask the question, am I in a cult? Chances are you are.
Yeah. Yes.
I can be really understanding with how Christians feel so insulted when they're told that they're in a cult, or at least certain. But like when you start taking a checklist of how cults operate and how like extreme religions operate, it's really hard to see a difference. Like they behave the same ways, and it's when you're indoctrinated, you don't see it and you refuse to see it. But once you're away for a while, it starts to become pretty obvious. Yeah.
So what do you? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Helen.
I was going to ask you. So what do you? So you're in that. Like, I'm out. And you're working on yourself. What are you doing now that's you found that, like, I want to hear something positive about your life now that you're out of religion and what you're doing
Yes.
and where you are
Hey,
now.
he came on the show. That's a positive. No,
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm incorporating him into my Helen cult. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. So, once I was expelled from Bob Jones, it was just like suddenly just out of that environment. So great things that started happening was, number 1, like going and being a part of a family where I could be myself, where I was loved and accepted, and an environment where I was not monitored. And again, when it's so normalized when you're trapped in that environment, I didn't realize the toll that it took on my body till I left it. I was like relaxed in places of my body that I didn't know were really tense before. I just felt a looseness and just not like so weighed down, felt lighter. And really, once I was expelled, I was like, I'm going to therapy. I'm going to get the validation and the healing, from my experiences. And I found a really great therapist in Greenville, and that I'm still working with and is still helping me work through things. And yeah, so at that point it was hard because I lost all my connections. So for me to meet other people and get community, I started my podcast, Speaking Up with Andrew Pledger, which has been so healing for me to meet other survivors. And I went on other podcasts immediately just to share my story and my experiences and connect with other people. And I ended up being hired by a cult expert whose name is Rachel Bernstein. She hosts the Indoctrination podcast, and I've been working for her since. So that was a really awesome thing that worked out. I helped with social media, and if she had never hired me, I don't know how long it would have taken me to realize that I was in a cult, 2 cults, and growing up. And so, yeah, that really forced me to dig into cult education and learn more and just come more off of that Kool-Aid. So I've been working for her for a year, and being able to go online and just be who I am, share my story, share opinions, and not worry about backlash. And I do get backlash, but not worry about any excommunication, I guess you would say, anymore. And for me, finishing college, that was such a big deal and wonderful thing to me. It was like a nice FU to Bob Jones University. And another great thing is, the podcast that I'm working on, Surviving Bob Jones University, a Christian Cult, which I'm so excited to expose the school and all the things that they've covered up. And they've tried to, paint this perfect image, but there's a lot that the podcast series will dig into. And I've also been able to get involved with a local deconstruction community in Greenville, which has been amazing for that community after religion. That has been so helpful, so validating for me, a safe space. But yeah, those are some core, really awesome things that I've worked out since leaving.
Andrew, we're running against the clock here, but I want to invite you back so we can talk about your podcast and Surviving Bob Jones University. If you're also willing, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to. Perfect. Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time, Andrew. That was really great to have you on board here. If people want to find out more about your adventures on that, where can they reach you?
Yeah. Just look up Andrew Pledger, and I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and the Surviving BGU podcast. The trailer is out and the intro episode is out, so people can subscribe. And people, please rate the podcast to help with backlash with the haters, because they've already started coming for me, giving me bad reviews. So if people could give me good reviews on the podcast, and it's coming August 23rd, 2023, it will premiere. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic.
I'll tell my cult members to up your give good reviews.
Before I let you go, I gotta have you say, "Hi, this is Andrew Pledger, and I took a left at the valley."
Oh yes. Hi, I'm Andrew Pledger, and I took a left at the valley.
Proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel.
Well, what do you think? Thank you so much for our guests for being here on the show, and thank you to my co-hosts, Brent Lee, Troy, Dawn, and Helen, and thank you for listening. You can follow us at leftatthevalley.ca. You can send us an email at leftatvalley@outlook.com. You can find us pretty much anywhere. Just go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just look for Left at the Valley, either the YouTube channel. Give us a 5-star review wherever you find us. It helps us and helps others find the show. And just pass the show on to a friend. We're always looking for new listeners. And if you ever feel so benevolent, become a patron of the show. Go to patreon.com/LETV, where patrons get an unedited version of the show, video version of the show, and maybe even a t-shirt. So help us grow the show. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.
I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance, and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist.